Um, Hi everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining, taking time out of your day. I know it's Saturday. But yeah, hi. I want to introduce myself first. Thank you, Millie, for this opportunity to be able to speak to you guys. My name is Claudia. I play tennis at UChicago. They're currently ranked number two in Division III and NCAA's. I play singles, third lineup and doubles second in lineup. And before college, so kind of where you guys were, I started playing tennis when I was 9 years old. I had the chance to represent Hong Kong since I was 12 until I was around 16. And I mainly played in the International Tennis Federation. So that's kind of an international circuit for juniors. I also got to represent Hong Kong in team events like the National Youth Games, Junior Fed Cup, and World Junior Tennis. So outside of this, I think in high school, I didn't do too many extracurriculars outside of tennis, but now in UChicago, on the tennis team, I'm currently team captain. And outside of that, I'm pursuing an internship in finance. And I'm also president of Alpha Kappa Delta Phi, which is an Asian interest sorority. But that's a little bit about myself. So this is what we're going to be covering today, a little bit of an agenda. So life as a student athlete, I'll be covering kind of what my day-to-day looks like and what you can expect at a student athlete. The recruiting process and timeline, which I think would be the most important part of this panel because it's trying to get you guys, the lay of the land of how it even looks like to be recruited as an international student. And tips and tricks on recruiting. This will include email formats and, just general courtesy and best practices of what to do. And finally, even though it sounds really hard, what you gain from being a student athlete, because ultimately I think it's an extremely valuable experience. And I'm sure most student athletes will agree. So let's jump right in. What is it like being a student athlete in college? So this is my typical day when it's off season. So I block my times into kind of tennis related things like lifting or PT. So that's physiotherapy or captain's practice. I have schoolwork, which you can see by my classes. I do an on-campus job, which typically takes around 9 to 10 hours per week. And info sessions are for career advancement. That's for me to explore different careers in finance, for example. And so I dedicate time to exploring what I want to do after graduation. Chapter is what at least my sorority calls, meeting together every week on Mondays. And then study time, obviously, schoolwork dedicated to just reviewing material or studying for a midterm. So it's really about being able to block off your times and, prioritize what's important to you so that you can dedicate the right amount of time that you need every day. So this is what it looks like on season. On season, we'll have practices a bit more frequently in the morning. So in off season, it's a bit more ad hoc where captains will organize practice with the team and when whoever is available will come. Whereas in on season, you might be restricted in what types of classes you can take. For example, for us, you can't take classes that start at 8 in the mornings, for example, because you need to make practice. So this might be a bit of a restraint on your classes. So it is important to plan ahead to know when your season is and if you're able to take those classes to meet your major requirements, for example. Then again, I have classes, on campus work. I do have time to socialize a little bit with friends outside of tennis. Lift and PT, again, on season is a little more time heavy, time intensive for tennis. And it involves things other than just practicing, than studying at night. And on the weekends, usually it's travel. For us, tennis games usually last pretty long and last the entire weekend. So usually we head out Friday night and come back Sunday night. So overall, what are the key takeaways from this? Being a part of college athletics is a sacrifice on other aspects on your college life. So you will have to dedicate more time to practicing. You'll miss out on some things that your peers may, have the luxury of enjoying. But ultimately, in the end, it's very, very rewarding because it's just the experience that only a very select and privileged group of student athletes get to experience. And it's definitely something you can look back on when, you know, you're older and you really treasure it. For me, I'm a senior now, and I can't imagine my college life without tennis because it's given me such a community and a home away from home. I'll get into that later, but that's what I think about it. So, how do you, I guess, navigate this? Prioritize and time manage. Like I said, time blocking is really important to be able to know what your day looks like. You know, can you manage this? You only have 24 hours in a day. If you want enough time to sleep, if you want enough time to rest and have, you know, a life outside of tennis or sorry, your sport or your school, you need to, you know, kind of shuffle around your schedule a little bit and be a bit more efficient with your time. I think most of our teammates are very efficient in, you know, doing what they need to do and doing what needs to get done. Two is communicating ahead of time. Usually teams are very good about this. Communicating ahead of time means with your teammates, you know, if you're feeling down or if you're feeling really stressed out, communicate to them. Most likely, you know, if you're a freshman, you might be scared to communicate to your coach and they can relay that for you. Or if you're comfortable enough talking directly with your coach, saying, I have a midterm tomorrow, like I don't think I can give 100% at practice today. Is that okay? And most likely they'll be okay with it because, you know, your mental health is really important to them too, because they want to preserve, you know, obviously they're really good players. And then communication also happens on the academic faculty level. So let's say your professor, you know, if you know your away games are on Thursday or Friday and you're missing class, communicate to them as soon as possible, and they're likely to give you some leniency. For example, I had to take a proctored exam while on the road. My coach was my proctor for a class that I had to take an in-person exam for. So that's one way they go about it. Other ways are maybe like rescheduling your presentation times, things like that, that will ultimately help you and benefit you if you do communicate ahead of time. Being resourceful is really important. Whatever you're going through, it's likely that someone else has gone through that as well, whether it be your seniors, whether it be, you know, people on other teams even. So, you know, find people who are a similar major, who have done similar classes or, you know, have a similar life outside of work to you, maybe they're in the same organization. You can talk to them, you know, see what they kind of experience, see what their life looks like, and maybe learn from them. You know, you can say, I'm having a hard time doing this. Can you, you know, provide me some guidance or show me some tips maybe on how to handle this? And they're really willing to help. So next is the recruiting process. So the recruiting process starts with the NCAA. The NCAA is a governing body that oversees all of college athletics. And I'm not sure how many sports there are, but I'd say like they govern most of the college sports that you see that are varsity. And so NCAA is also divided into three main divisions. There are other divisions that I won't be going into today. I think that most international students tend to move towards these three, at least from what I see. And those are like JUCO or another governing body, which is called the NAIA. So I'll get into D1, D2, and D3 here. So on one end of the spectrum, it's D1. They offer full ride or partial scholarships depending on athletic ability. They have very small teams because of this restraint, and they're usually, you know, spend a lot of time together. A lot of my friends in D1, their main friend group is their team, which is, I guess, less common in D3. Obviously, it's still there, but, you know, a larger proportion of D1 schools have their team as their main circle. Very strict recruiting procedures. You'll see things like quiet phase or phases where, you know, your coach can't communicate to you or there's only certain things that can be discussed. These I would advise you to look directly on the NCAA website on these phases, particular to your sport, because it's also different for each sport. so that you don't, put yourself in a situation where it could hurt you. And again, more time intensive. I'd say practice is probably longer for them. And most of their life does revolve around, I guess, their sport and school. On the other end is D3. So recruiting procedures are a little more flexible and a little more ad hoc. They're not as stringent, and I'd say from person to person, the recruiting process can be very different. So two of the freshmen on my team had very different timelines for them, and they were both international. So it's not so much of a strict pipeline that you would see in D1. It's more free flowing. Larger team sizes. University of Wisconsin-Madison has 8 girls on their team. Our team has 17. So very different. You see a larger team in D3 schools. And because they don't have the budget restraint, it's more like or like a scholarship budget restraint. It's more, if the coach sees fit, you can take on walk-ons, for example. But the number of players actually playing in lineup, same goes for every sport, is still the same. It's more reliant on academics. So you see very academic intensive schools like Caltech, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, schools like that, or very liberal arts schools like those in the NESCAC, like Tufts, Wesleyan, Amherst. And there's a wide variety of very academically rigorous schools in D3. Not to say that D1 there aren't, but I'd say D3 is very focused on that. And they put a lot of their resources in academic development for their students. So that also leaves you more time to explore extracurriculars, since tennis or your sport doesn't take up, as much time as in D1. So you are able to have the freedom of kind of exploring what you want, and there's not as much restriction on what classes you can take, what you can do over the summer, things like that. But note on D3 schools, there are no scholarships for athletic ability. And so if you do find that important, you'll need to, consider financial aid or need-based financial aid in the school. And for D1 schools, Ivy Leagues, although they're D1, they don't offer scholarships. D2, I'd say I don't personally know too many international students that played in D2, but it's closer to D1 in terms of scholarships and time commitment. I'd say they look like they're in the middle of D1 and D3, but I'd say they lean a bit more heavily towards the D1 side. Scholarships, again, they can be full ride or partial, and there's a very wide variety of different schools, but most schools that you might have heard of in your communities are probably going to be D1 and D3, I would say. That are at least well known beyond, overseas and beyond the US. Obviously, D2 schools are, they're very strong in academics too for some of the institutions, but most of what we hear, at least, comes from D1 and D3. So recruiting timeline, kind of how you should space out your time. Junior year, you should start researching schools, in the beginning, see what schools fit you or you fit. I'll talk about that a bit more later. In the middle of junior year, reach out to coaches by email or some method of kind of getting yourself exposed to them. So whether that be video or camps or tournaments, things like that. At the end of at the end of your junior year, you should already kind of have had contact with your coach, and you're kind of finalizing, I'm interested in playing for you, and they're saying I'm interested to recruiting you. So beginning of senior year, you've kind of finalized that mutual interest and you begin applying for schools. And in the middle, so around December to February, depending on whether you apply regular decision or early decision, you get your acceptance. So that's how the process, I'd say, would work. I gave more margin to dates, I guess maybe even a 4-month margin in the middle of junior year to reach out to coaches, because again, it's very dependent on the person. It's very dependent on the coach, how many emails they can sift through, whether they're busy with season, things like that. That really, it really influences how your recruiting process will look like. So this is what I was talking about when you should research your school. So less is more. Focus on the key schools you want to apply to. I made the mistake of reaching out to every single school that was like, I don't know, like I sent 100 emails. I'm not even kidding. You don't want to do that. You really want to narrow down your list of schools and make those emails very personal. I'll talk about that a bit later. But if you feel like you have a strong connection to a school, don't waste your time on schools that you are kind of about. And you should really, focus your attention on these schools that, okay, I know I want to be here. This is your fit in the school. So do you meet up to their standards? Academically, are you up to par with the median of the school? Your potential position within the team. I'm not sure how other team sports do this, but for example, maybe soccer, they might not need another goalie. Like you might have to take that into consideration if you are a goalie. And what your sport means to you. Obviously, looking at Division 1 and Division 3, do you want to dedicate a big chunk of your college life to playing your sport? That is really important because, if you just want to play it like on the side, but still competitively, maybe D1 isn't for you. At the same time, if you really want to ramp up on competitiveness and you feel like, oh, I want to ride that wave that juniors gave me, D1 might be better suited for you. Ultimately, you had to ask yourself these questions or else you'll end up resenting the program because it didn't fit, what you wanted. Then after talking about how you fit into the school, then how school fits you. Do you like their location? Do you like being a city school or, a bit more suburban area? Do you like the size of the school? Do you like knowing every single person on campus or do you like meeting new people every day? Culture, again, like UChicago is a very nerdy culture. I kind of like that, but if you like maybe a bit more of a social school, a bit more of like socially heavy school, maybe another school might be more suited to you. Academic program, does it give you the major that you want to study? Does it offer you the ability to change if you don't know? What classes can you take? What classes interest you? Can you double major? Can you do a minor in a specific, topic? Things like that are really important too to think about because the last thing you want is going into a college where they don't even offer a major that you want to do. And the financial needs, of course, is a very important question for a lot of people. So do they offer financial assistance to international students? How do you get financial assistance from the athletic program if it's D1 or D2? And different types of scholarships that you can apply to for the school. So once you've done your research, you have a solid list of maybe 5 to 10 schools that you want to reach out to. And so typically you would email coaches. And so this is kind of a sample of what I emailed. I've done some tweaks here and there because I think I would have changed what I would have said maybe 5 years ago. But this is a pretty rough outline of what it should look like. First, subject header. You should really use that to introduce yourself. Key statistics. Okay, what's your name? What class are you recruiting for? Rankings, if there are any, or times if you're in a time-based sport. Your like academic ability. So like a very quick snapshot, for example, ACT, SAT, IB, AP, things like that. And I guess where you're from. So dear Coach Blah, please be sure to make sure you message or email the right coach. And then 2, just, what is this email even about? Like, give a very like a brief one sentence on, what, like an overview of what is this email even. And then 3, talk about your statistics maybe on what you've competed in, what tournaments you will be or have traveled to recently, just anything that can indicate your athletic ability to them and their ability to kind of research a bit more on you. And then 4, why you're interested in the school, even because what coaches will decide is also your fit in the school. They'll see, like, if they see someone, that they feel like won't fit into the culture of the school, they might not, extend the offer of mutual interest. as opposed to someone who really fits the school culture. So, research a bit of that and talk about why you're interested in school, because ultimately you're not just there for the team, you're there for the institution as well. So yeah. Feel free to screenshot this if this is at all helpful. Okay. Reaching out, make it as easy as possible for the coach. The last thing they want to do is take a lot of effort to researching who you are. And, there's an inverse correlation with the amount of time they have to spend on you, like researching you, and your chances of them, reaching back out to you. I asked my coach this, so I know for sure. So, make it as easy as possible. If you have videos, hyperlink them. Don't make them search it up on YouTube. For example, I had a sports resume, which listed out all my key achievements just on one PDF page. Easy peasy, they get to just click into it and look. Also on the videos, show your real performance. I think it's very easy to look good in practice and have things set up so that you look good. I sent in match play videos so that they knew what they were recruiting for, because ultimately they want someone who can compete for their team, right? They don't want someone who can just practice good. So I'd say show your real performance. And transcripts and academics, at least from what I know, international students don't really do this, but you can ask your school admin if they can provide a transcript of your grades from all your classes before junior year, and send that to your coach, because that is a good indicator. If you haven't taken the SATs or ACTs yet, they'll need it, and it'll just be easy for them to not have to email you and say, hi, can you provide your transcript? Just send it all in one email. And then use standardized results, like the well-known ones, like SAT, ACT, AP, IB, even TOEFL maybe, or IGCSE, just because, they want a metric that they kind of know and can measure you up on. So what do you do once you hear back? It's important that, if you're hearing back, they probably are interested in you, and you're obviously interested in them. So it's about getting to know each other and asking questions that you can't find online. So a phone call, typically maybe 30 minutes, I'd say. And it's important that you introduce yourself, show your interest in the school, talk about the key points that you talked about in point 4 of the email. And you can feel free to expand on it a little bit if you want. And again, ask good questions that you have to find online, like culture of the team, what does practice look like, things like insider information. And then if you have the chance, if you want, you can ask the coach, oh, is there anyone on the team I can speak to? If you want to ask questions about maybe the coach, for example, you want to know if they're a good coach, and you can't really ask them directly, then they can put you in touch with players. But it's not their responsibility, ultimately it's just an ask that you can do, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And then, ask questions that are player specific that maybe you don't want to ask the coach in front of them. Here's a question toolbox that I think might be helpful. Again, screenshot this if you think you might need them. But these are questions that you definitely can't find online, because they're a little more personal, and these might matter to you aside from the statistics of the team, for example. So all in all, it sounds like it's really hard to become a student athlete because the recruiting process is just so much more time intensive than the regular admission process. But ultimately, I learned a lot about teamwork and, being dependable and being able to depend on other people. Tennis is a pretty lonely sport in juniors, but I enjoy it so much more in college because I'm able to fight for something bigger than me. In juniors, it's very, I win, I lose, it's all on me. But in college, we win as a team and lose as a team. Even though I lost my match, if we win overall, that's a win for me. So just this feeling of camaraderie is just very precious to me. And I feel like a lot of student athletes can speak about that if they're in, a setting where they're put into a team and you play for your school and you play for the people around you. And again, a whole different dimension of the college experience. I have a lot of friends outside of tennis that, don't dabble in college sports. And it's fun, kind of recapping what I do or them, hearing about my experiences. And, sometimes when you go on competition, it's like being transported into a totally different world. I personally don't remember any schoolwork when like I'm playing a match or when it's those 5 to 6 hours of match play. Like I'm completely in the zone for tennis. Like I'm not thinking about the midterm I have on Monday. That's like a later problem, but essentially you get to be kind of in this whole different world that you can kind of escape from if you really like your sport. Thirdly, home away from home. Um, yeah, just on campus when you arrive, a lot of people, everyone's lonely when they arrive to campus. No one has really close friends, but you have a very good support system already in place because of your sport. And that's really important when considering, moving across the world to do tertiary education to better yourself. But at the same time, your mental stability or your health could, falter a little bit when you don't have a close community around you. And this is really important for you to establish that kind of connection with your team. And so I really enjoy it. I feel like I can talk to my team about anything. And when I joined, I didn't have any international like upperclassmen above me, but now the team has 5 international students, and I feel like the I guess younger sophomores now they can ask me questions, and I can do my best to try and share my experiences and help guide them so that they don't have to feel so lonely in the process. Yeah, I think these are convincing enough for me at least to be a student athlete, and yeah, I just think it's a very rewarding experience. But yeah, thank you so much for listening in today. If you have any questions, you can scan the QR code and I'll wait for them to kind of filter in and see if I can answer anything I didn't cover. It looks like there weren't any questions that I could see in the Q&A. But yeah, I hope this was helpful, at least in some sense, on what recruiting looks like. But thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to, you can message me on LinkedIn or find me on Facebook, and we can chat and I'll see if I can answer any questions I didn't cover